What in the world? Okay. What in the world? Hello YouTube, today we'll be starting Found Footage Month with what's easily the most popular of the genre, that being the Blair Witch Project. Sure, there were a few films before this one that either tried to make it realistic or used found footage, but this one stands out as it used the internet to its advantage. The directors made a website for the movie with police reports about the missing filmmakers, information about the families and people, missing posters, a documentary, Heather's diary pages, and a whole lot more. This made people believe that what happened in the film was real, so much so that some of the parents even got sympathy cards. It was a game changer for the horror genre and has earned its place in movie history, but does it still hold up? Let's just get into it and find out. So for the story, it's extremely simple. Three amateur filmmakers go into the woods for a weekend in order to shoot a documentary about a local legend in the town of Burkensville, which is about the Blair Witch. And if you guys want to know more about the legends and stuff, there is actually a documentary prequel to the movie which you can find easily online. It's actually kind of interesting. So yeah, that's something that I would recommend if you're interested in the lore behind this. So they go into the woods after hearing that there's a cemetery out there and there's some stuff they want to shoot for the documentary out there. However, the first night that they camp, one of them hears some strange noises outside and even hears a cackling. So, I mean, that would kind of deter you from being there forever again. But no, I mean, of course they decide to stay because they still need to shoot the documentary part where there's a little cemetery out there. It's very important to them. So, yeah, they go out there and they eventually find the cemetery after getting more lost and more annoyed. So, they find the cemetery and it's just a little rock piles. Like all cemeteries look. So one of them kicks it over, which is a horrible thing to do and now very much angers the Blair Witch. I mean, she was already kind of annoyed about them even being there, but them kicking over the rocks was the last straw.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure nothing bad's gonna happen after that.
Might be cursed now. So, yeah, anyway, this really annoys the Blair Witch, although, again, she was already kind of annoyed, and she decides to get her revenge the best way she knows how. By moderately annoying them, by making them get more lost, making little stick figure people in front of their tents, putting up more rock piles, which, no, they don't continue to kick over, unfortunately, and making one of them kick the map into the river. I know that Mike thought that the map was useless, but that was a really stupid thing to do. It's the only way they know at least maybe where they're going. So yeah, that's really stupid to just kick it into the river like that, Mike. But yeah, I mean, that really, again, the only reason why I can see why he might do something like that is because the witch wanted him to and made him. Other than that, that was the stupidest idea. But yeah, anyway, so they're all really annoyed at Mike for like 5 minutes, and then they're okay with it again. And yeah, eventually they camp for the night again, and everyone seems pretty upset and paranoid with everything, but At the very least, they do try and make amends that night. And then Josh is kidnapped. Oh no, not Josh. I knew him so well. No, I didn't. So, yeah, Josh disappears off screen, and something terrifying happens off screen. Can we just see one of these creepy things happen? That's what I would like. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. We see something punching a tent. Oh, yeah, okay, that's the most horrifying thing. You know, that could have just been Josh screwing with you guys, but okay. So, yeah, they get more. So, yeah, they now left their tent, and Josh is now missing. As you can tell, they're such great friends. So, yeah, they're now even more angry at each other, and more arguments ensue. And oh my god, something just killed them already. So, yeah, seriously, most of this movie is them arguing about either being lost, the map, or just them yelling at each other, or where Josh is. That's really most of this movie. Actually, that's like an hour and 20 minutes of this movie. The rest of it's spooky stuff. So, yeah, if you find that interesting, this is the movie for you. So, yeah, they eventually stumble upon a house in the middle of the woods. A house which they heard the legend about earlier, and that legend includes a serial killer murdering children there. You know, that would kind of deter me from going in there, but oh wait, no, I'm sorry. They heard Josh yelling in there. Obviously, he's in there. Now, to be fair, Mike's the one who leads the charge here, which is a little bit against his character, but yeah, anyway. So, yeah, he's the one who goes in there, and Heather just sort of follows. Now, here's why this doesn't make any sense. Heather found something earlier. She found a pile of sticks. Ooh, scary. And she found Josh's shirt on top of it. When she opened it up, she saw teeth, blood, and a tongue in there. Oh, and by the way, the teeth were actual teeth. Yeah, the directors just asked the dentist, "Hey, can we use some teeth for a movie?" And they just said, "Okay." It's that easy to get real human teeth, I guess. So, yeah, moving on from fun facts. She found the most important thing about what she found there is his tongue. You know, that thing that is very important in human speech. So, yeah, Josh wouldn't be making any noise there, so, yeah, she should just say, "Hey, no, I found Josh's tongue earlier," or at least what I can infer is Josh's tongue, so, yeah, let's not go into the creepy murder house. She could just yell that to him immediately. I mean, alright, it's already stupid that she didn't tell us to Mike from right off the bat when she found it, but to be fair, she could have just been trying to make him feel better, which, yeah, would actually be a little bit nice and would be understandable. So she could just tell him this now when they're going into a murder house. But no, of course, they just decide to go in there anyway, and Josh's voice is heard all throughout the house, in the attic, and eventually in the basement, where Mike runs to, and he gets knocked out, and when Heather follows, she sees him just standing there in a corner, which again relates to the serial killer. So, yeah, maybe then you might want to, just leave the house, but, I mean, you already know this legend, you know how this is gonna end for you, but no, of course, just stay there and be like, Mike, what are you doing? What's going on, Mike? Why don't you just turn around to me, Mike? Yeah, that's what I would do. So, and then she gets attacked from behind, and the movie ends. So, yeah, that's kind of disappointing. Yeah, we never actually see the Blair Witch in this thing, ever. We do get a description of her, and to be fair, if you guys really want to find out, there was a toy made of her, because, of course, there was, but other than that, no, there's nothing of what she actually looks like. Now, to be fair, this does play into the realism gimmick, which I'll get into a little bit more in a few minutes, but yeah, it's extremely disappointing that we never see anything outside of some stick figures and some rock piles. Oh, and people getting lost. Oh, obviously the most terrifying thing to happen here. Other than that, though, there's nothing to this. It's just people arguing the movie, and yeah, it gets old really, really, really fast. But I can say that it is a little bit interesting, and now here's why. It's because the realism thing. Yeah, I already brought this up in my little introduction here, but there's actually a whole lot more to this. This gimmick was pushed so much that even the actors, they were just sent to the woods with vague direction as to what to do, and some of their reactions here are real. That's part of what makes this story work, is the realism about it. Now, I will say that the boring aspect is definitely a deterrent from this movie and its story, as yeah, it's really boring to just watch people argue for an hour and a half. But I will also say that it was done for a reason, and it is handled very well. The actors do a good job here, and they do handle the hopelessness of the situation rather well, which does get you more invested if you are invested in the characters. However, that's kind of hard to do, as like I said, most of it's just them arguing, and that gets old and annoying, and you just want to see these people die at some points. So yeah, while they do get some humanizing moments, it is annoying to see sometimes. Now, I will say, part of my reaction to this movie is done due to, well, me just not being around when this movie first came out. That's a huge problem, and something that I do wish I was actually around for, as it is actually kind of interesting, and I feel like if I were around, I probably would have bought into the gimmick, just like everybody else did, except for my mom. I actually asked her if she actually went to go see this or even read the website. Nope, she heard about it but never did. So unless if you're her, you probably got invested. So yeah, there were some people who just sort of smelled it as a gimmick, but a lot of other people did actually buy into this, and that's what really made this film interesting. Now, I will say that I do find more looking into the research on this film and sort of the backstory for it to be a whole lot more interesting than the film itself, as yeah, again, it's just people arguing and wondering where Josh is, and yeah, again, it's annoying and old. So, yeah, there really is a problem with that, and despite some humanizing moments with the main characters, yeah, we never really get to know them all that well, which something I'll get into a little bit later, but yeah, the story does really suffer from that and is rather bland. However, again, that's kind of what it's supposed to be. There are some plot points that never really go anywhere, which again, just sort of is supposed to go into the more realism aspect. So, really, it just depends to how you're viewing this movie as to how the story works. However, when we're speaking of viewings for this movie, I will say there are a few other things that fans have come up with that actually make it kind of interesting to rewatch. In particular, there are two theories that I personally just find interesting. Now, the one that I find least interesting out of these two is the time theory, which, yeah, is pretty much just the Blair Witch can manipulate time, and everything in the forest is affected by that. And yeah, really, it's just not that interesting of a theory. And while yes, it does have some backing behind it, it's still not that impressive or interesting at all to me. However, the one that did get me invested was the Mike and Josh are the killers plot, which watching the movie again is something that you'll really notice, and it's something that is very, very interesting, especially if you already know what's going to happen. It's something that honestly made me more intrigued in the movie, and it's definitely an interesting way to rewatch it. So yeah, there are a few ways that you can actually find this movie to make it more interesting. So yeah, I will say that the boring stuff, well, yeah, there are definitely huge problems with that. There are ways to liven it up, and also it is done with a reason behind it. It's just, yeah, personally, I just couldn't get all that invested in it. So for the story, I'm gonna give it a 5, as I know what it's trying to do, and it does a good job in that regard. I will say, it's just, God, it had to be so boring. I mean, again, most of it is just them arguing and nothing scary happens. It's very anticlimactic in that regard. So, yeah, just looking at it as a movie and its story on its own and just looking away from all the interesting backstory to it, well, yes, I do see what it's trying to accomplish. And it does do it pretty well. It is still a rather boring experience unless you have something kind of interesting to look at when you're actually rewatching it. So, yeah, 5 out of 10 for the story. So now let's get into the characters. For the characters, there's a whopping 3 of them. Yeah, there's not that many characters in this, but yeah, well, at least that gives them enough time to be developed, right? Anyway, let's get into them. So let's start with the main one, with that being Heather. She's an ambitious young filmmaker, and yeah, she's pretty much the one who's in charge of the whole documentary. And also in charge of the map and a camera, which annoys Mike and Josh a lot for some reason. So, yeah, really, there's not that much to her. She's just sort of a normal person until paranoia starts getting to her. And also, she just starts yelling at everybody. And yeah, that's pretty much what can be said for everybody in this, actually. They're all rather normal until some weird things happen, and then they all just freak out entirely. Like, oh my god, there's a rock pile outside of our tent. Oh my god, what do we do? That's really kind of their reaction to that. And yeah, that's really not that interesting, honestly. And again, if you find people arguing to be engaging, then this is the perfect movie for you. And I'm glad that you have finally found a movie that you will love forever, because God, there's just arguing and arguing and arguing with like a few second breaks for them to either joke around or just for them to just sort of talk about what they want to do in their lives or what they wanted to. Now those are easily the most interesting moments for them, as it does develop their characters a little bit more, and also we do get to see a lot more of an emotional and sort of tragic side to this. But then they go right back to arguing, and then you're just like, yeah, okay, kill him again. So yeah, that is a huge problem with the characters in this, and it's something that can really just be said for all of them. I was gonna talk about them all individually, but really it's hard to do that because they're all kind of the same outside of either their jobs or how some of them act. Like Josh is a little bit more of a stoner type character. However, that's not really that focused on or gives him anything that'll differentiate him from Mike. So yeah, really, half the time I didn't even know which one was Mike and which one was Josh. They were wearing similar clothes, so I really couldn't tell. I thought that Josh having longer hair would make them a little bit more differentiating, but nope. He wore a hat and tied his hair back. So, yeah, I easily lost track of which one was which in this. And yeah, when that starts to happen with your characters, there's a problem. However, I will say that the 3 of them do have something that at the very least makes them stand out a little bit. Like I said, Josh is a little bit more of a stoner character. However, that's like what I also said, isn't focused on that much. He is sort of more the peacekeeper between Heather and Mike in this, as yeah, there are a lot of moments where they go at each other's throats and he sort of just gets them to stop. And once he leaves, that happens a whole lot more. So that's something that I noticed with him. That was a little bit nice. Mike is a little bit more quick tempered, and also he's a little bit more self-preservative, as yeah, there are a lot of moments where he'll just do something that requires, well, just some common sense, and it's just like, well, there's a thing attacking our tent, let's leave the tent. Honestly, I think that if Heather didn't see him run out, she would have just stayed. So yeah, he does have a little bit more common sense to him until he hears Josh's voice in a murder house and then decides I should go in there because I'm smart. So yeah, there is a bit of a change in character there. However, again, the Mike and Josh killer theory does support that. So again, that also makes it for an interesting watch. Seriously, I love that theory. It makes this movie so much more interesting to me. So Yeah, he is definitely. There's definitely a few things that do separate them. And also for Heather, her thing is that, well, she's very passionate about her project. Even recording when, yeah, really, that's not the time that you really should be like, hey, our tent's being attacked. Well, time for me to continue recording and lugging around this big camera. I'm smart. So, yeah, there are definitely some dumb moments for that. However, you do see why she does that, as, yeah, it's said by Mike in the movie that the reason why she does like filming is, well, because it sort of makes everything not feel completely real, and it's definitely something that she needed in the situation. So, it does make some sense to why she's like that. And it does add some more character to her. It's just that, again, a lot of these characters only have one thing that differentiates them outside of Heather being the only girl there. Other than that, though, they're all pretty much the same, and that can become a really annoying, especially if you're trying to figure out which one's which. As, yeah, two of them dress sort of similar and act pretty much the same. So, yeah, there are a lot of moments where I really couldn't even tell either apart. So, yeah, there is a huge problem with that, and that definitely does bring down the characters, as well as them just arguing with each other most of the time and only having a few moments where they actually sit down and talk. And I will say those moments are nice, and you do feel the tragedy for the characters, and you do understand their situation. It's just really that's all that I can give them, as really that doesn't fix their characters at all, as they are still rather bland. However, again, like I said, my story part, this was their real reaction to most of this stuff in this movie. So, again, that does really help these characters a lot, as that's how they would really react in these scenarios, and it does add some more to their performance there. So, their acting here is very good, and I will give them that. It's just the characters that they're playing aren't as interesting. So, for the characters, I'll give them a 6 out of 10, as they're alright. It's just that they are kind of bland and are only differentiated between each other by just a few things. So, now for the movie overall, it's pretty boring, actually. Yeah, there's really not all that much else that you can say about it outside of it's boring. It takes forever for something to happen, and when it does, most of the time it's off screen or you can't really tell what it is, which is a huge problem, especially if you're actually trying to see anything spooky in this horror movie. However, I will also say that does play into the realism aspect, which is definitely a big thing that makes this movie interesting and kind of as iconic as it is. The way that this movie was marketed is a little bit more interesting to me, at the very least more than the movie itself, as I'm more intrigued about learning more about that than I was about the movie and or where these characters' stories were going, as yeah, actually there are some things that don't even get resolved in the end. So yeah, there's things that are dropped. And when I find the Scooby-Doo parody of this thing more creepy and interesting, there's a huge problem here. Oh, and yeah, just so you guys know, there is actually a Scooby-Doo parody of this. It's admittedly kind of hilarious. I recommend you guys check it out. But yeah, really overall, it just has a lot of problems. But like I said, it did change the horror genre, and also, well, it's just a very, very iconic movie, and that definitely does make it a little bit more interesting. While it's something that I particularly can't get invested in, it's not because it's a bad movie. It's just, well, okay, yeah, it kind of is. But it's also because I didn't see this when I was supposed to. I wasn't around when this movie first came out, and if I was, well, I would have been too young to have seen it, so, or even remembered it. So, yeah, that's really what didn't get me invested in this. If I were around when this movie first came out, I have no doubt in my mind that this movie would have been amazing to watch and would have been a very big spectacle and also an intriguing film, and one that I would want to know a lot more about, as it has a very interesting history and marketing ploy, which definitely add a whole lot more to the movie overall. And it is very good in that regard as to the way that it's handled. However, just viewing it on its own, it's very slow, has some very annoying characters, which are very hard to differentiate between each other, despite there being a few things that do make them stand out from one another. And yeah, really, it's just very anticlimactic and kind of boring. However, it does still. However, if we're going to look at with either an interesting theory in mind or just from the time period that it came out in and knowing the backstory of the marketing, then it's an extremely interesting movie and one with a very, very interesting past to it, as well as just being a huge game changer. So, yeah, it definitely does have its problems, and it depends as to how you look at the movie overall, but if I'm going to rate it, it'll be a 6.5. As yeah, definitely yeah, as that's pretty much the mix of my two thoughts on this movie. As I'm pretty split as to whether I find it more interesting taking the marketing or theory into mind, or if I'm just viewing it on its own merit. So yeah, there are definitely a few ways that you can watch this movie that make it interesting, and it is iconic for a reason, and it was a huge game changer for horror. So yeah, it definitely does have its interesting aspects and draws to it. However, it does also have its major problems. So yeah, for it overall, I give it a 6.5 out of 10. And next week we'll be continuing Found Footage Month with the Paranormal Activity. Okay, well, just Paranormal Activity. I don't know why I said it like that. Anyway, we're going to be looking at that next week. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Bye.